Welcome everyone to the program. We begin this noon bulletin at the court, where the Lagos State High Court has struck out former Governor Akeomi Ambode's suit seeking an injunction to restrain the state lawmakers from probing him over the purchase of 820 buses. Justice Yetunde Adesoya held that the court lacked the jurisdiction to stop the lawmakers from going ahead with the probe. Former Governor Ambode instituted the civil suit against the State House of Assembly, its Speaker Mudashiru Obasa and the House Clerk, Mr. Sani. Other respondents to the suit are Mr. Fatai Majid, the chairman of an ad hoc committee set up by the House to probe the procurement of the buses, and 8 members of the committee. The Lagos State House of Assembly had summoned former Governor Ambode to appear before it to explain all he knows about some financial transactions that took place under his administration. Well, next is a hearing of the deregistration by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, where the Federal High Court in Abuja is expected to sit today. The court last week restrained INEC from deregistering 35 political parties in the country. Justice Anwoli Chikere gave the interlocutory order at the hearing of a suit by some of the parties recently deregistered by the electoral body. The judge says INEC failed to oppose the application by the applicants, whose rights of association must be protected. Now, it looks like a new date may have been given for the hearing, as the court has not begun sitting on the matter. Well, as a legal tussle over the deregistration of some political parties goes on, there is yet another tussle, and some of these party leaders are engaged in outside of the courtroom. And it appears there is no end in sight to the leadership crisis currently rocking the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, as both the embattled chairman, Mr. Peter Ame, and Mr. Leonard Nzewa continue to lay claim to the chairmanship seat of the political party's advisory group. Speaking at 2 separate news conferences in Abuja, the factions give counter-directives to their state chapters, while those in the camp of Mr. Leonard Nzewa direct members of IPAC in the states to appoint interim presiding officers and send in their names to the national body. The Peter Ame faction of IPAC asks state chapters to disregard such orders. The current crisis in IPAC started about 3 weeks ago after INEC deregistered 74 political parties, a situation that made some of the 18 surviving political parties appoint new leadership for IPAC, insisting that any member of a deregistered political party cannot be a member of IPAC.
The Inter-Mining Committee, steering affairs of the 18 registered political parties in the country, will not detain itself to undertake crucial functions beholden to it to exercise towards promoting dialogue and adjudicating between and among the political parties and several stakeholders seeking to reach out and engage with registered political parties under the banner of IPAC. In furtherance of above, the state chapters of IPAC is hereby directed to amicably replicate the institution of an interim management committee to oversee the affairs of the council in their respective states, pending when election is to be conducted.
The so-called press release today by the illegal committee and the instructions to state IPAC is tidy, fraudulent, unlawful, and absolutely illegal, and it should be totally discarded by all state IPAC across the federation. The 7-man committee is not known to IPAC. It's not known to IPAC code of conduct, and as such, the council is using this medium to instruct all executive members of IPAC across the states of federation to desist from taking such instructions. Take notice that the protected 7-man committee should be clearly guided that this kind of unlawful misconduct is punishable under the law of the federation.
So let's discuss some of the issues generated by this controversy. So a lot to discuss, but we're being joined by Mr. Ademola Babatunde, who is the publicity secretary of IPAC, one of the factions, I should say. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Good afternoon, and thank you for sharing your time with us on the program today.
Kade, good afternoon. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now,
good afternoon, Nigerians.
Great to have you. Now, this is a lot to wrap our heads around. There's a court case, there's INEC's, decision to deregister parties, and now we have factions in IPAC. As it stands right now, Who is in charge of IPAC?
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, the Factional, the interim committee chairman just left now because he wasn't ready for this debate. I would have loved him to be here so that he can hear what actually I would like to say on behalf of the council. I want to say to Nigerians that as far as we are concerned in the council, I, Chief Peter Ame, still remain the council president, and the IPAC, I, Chief Peter Ame, led executive, still remain the executive that is that was elected by the entire council, and our tenure will be expiring in about 5 to 6 months' time. IPAC is an institution that is formed by political parties in Nigeria and is guided by code of conduct. Recently, we just revised the code of conduct, and it was accepted generally. And we also had an election recently across the states of the Federation, and we have executives, we have 13 executive offices that people were elected for, parties were elected for. And as such, the guideline, the principles and tenets of this code of conduct has revealed clearly that nobody can operate without a particular guide. In every system, there is a rule, and the rule is very clear. Article 5 of the Constitution of the IPAC Code of Conduct has revealed the extent and the conditions for a removal of executives in the office. And one of it is not setting up an interim committee. An interim committee is not known by IPAC Code of Conduct,
Right.
and is not acceptable by the majority of the members in council.
Right.
And if you look at these 7 people parading themselves up and down as interim executives, I want to ask Ezenwa a question, that where exactly are they operating from? What rules, what guides are they operating from? What's the principle that they are basing their ideologies upon? So
Mr.
I can't really see why they come up and misinform Nigerians.
Mr. Babatunde, let's try to get some answers to the question you have put up. Just a moment, Mr. Babatunde.
These guys are going about.
If you can hear me, Mr. Babatunde, let's try to get some answers to the questions you have brought up. And we're being joined on the phone by Mr. Agbo Major. He is the publicity secretary of the 7-man interim committee of IPAC. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be able to speak to Nigerians on this issue.
So, Mr. Babatunde has raised some questions, saying that this interim committee goes against the code of conduct of IPAC. He's asking that, where are you operating from? And a couple of other questions, but let's begin. First, we understand that there's a court order restraining INEC from registering political parties. And it sort of begs the question, why would we then have the interim committee if the court is saying, you know what, let's hold on here. Let's not deregister these parties yet. If you can shed some light on that briefly.
Okay, thank you so much. In the first place, I need to place it on record so that Nigerians can get a clearer picture of what our mindset is on this imbroglio. We are not celebrating in any way the difficult situation our colleagues have found themselves. Of course, we have worked as one community, as a community of 92 political parties. What has befell them, we are not celebrating it. But as long as the party monitoring body, which is the Independent National Electoral Commission, which has the legal responsibility of registering and monitoring the activities of political parties in the country, according to them, they have done what they feel is in line with the provisions of the laws of the land. And that is the basis in the first place for the removal of 72 of our colleagues, you know, in a matter of hours. We are not celebrating it. But having said that, we are politicians, and as human beings too, nature abhors vacuum. Unfortunately, our colleagues at the other side are trying to make this thing look as if we are, celebrating the difficult situations they found themselves. That is not the truth. What we've tried to do is to ensure that there is no gap. We try to bridge a gap. There's an obvious gap. INEC, that is a regulatory body, is saying that, look, we recognize only 18 political parties that fulfilled the requirements of the law. According to them, Section 225A of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is amended. According to them, that is the basis for what they did. And we are thinking that, look, there should be continuity. So if that gap has been created as a result of this deregistration, it will not be right if we just leave IPAC to go follow like that. What we need to do is to put in place a small committee that will be overseeing the activities of political parties, pending when this matter would be determined from the court. We are in solidarity with
Now
them.
that you bring in the court, just a moment, now that you bring in the court, we understand that the Federal High Court Abuja restrained INEC. I'm sure you, of course, that's in public domain. So in the face of that particular order, do you still think there's a need for the interim committee?
Yes, there is a need, because as far as they are concerned, if you listen to INEC's side of the argument, they are saying that they had already completed the action before that interlocutory injunction came. That is the angle from, I'm not a lawyer, but that is the angle from where INEC is coming from. And we were thinking, because even as it is now, okay, look, we just completed the submission of forms for by-elections in Kwara, Sokoto, and Niger State last week Friday. And we are aware that forms were taken from only the 18, recognized political parties. In such a situation, I don't know what our colleagues would expect us to do. What we did is in the interest of everybody, including them.
I'd like to get one other thing I'd like to get clarification on is Mr. Babatunde says that, I mean, in what part of the code of conduct of IPAC does it say there can be an interim committee? So what are you leaning on to form this particular committee?
The law is made for humans. And in an exceptional situation like this, the same people for whom the law is made have the right to take decisions to ensure that whatever is the obvious gap is breached. What we did, of course, they will continue to tell you that there's no place for it in the code of conduct. Yes, they could say that. There's no doubt about that. But the issue is like in the case of when we had issues with the failing health of our dear former president, Yaradua, the National Assembly had to invoke what they call the doctrine of necessity, so that there will be no vacuum. You can imagine what would happen in a nascent democracy like ours if a vacuum had been created. It's the same thing we've tried to do. And you see, it's a learning process. With the decision we have in our hands now, we now know that there should be an arrangement to put into the code of conduct.
Okay, Mr. Agbo, I'm going to have to ask you to hold your thoughts for a moment. Let's get in Mr. Babatunde and get his final thoughts on this. So, Mr. Babatunde, you have listened to him, and I'd like to just ask you before we close, or before we take a break this time around, what are you planning to do? What's the way forward? We understand that the court is meant to continue hearing your case, but as it stands right now, what is the way forward for you?
Yeah, thank you very much. You know that 74 political parties were announced deregistered. And these political parties are members all over the country. And we have our structures. We are law-abiding citizens and organizations of the country. And we believe so much in the rule of law. And that was why, in the first place, you won't find us on the streets. And we have resorted to go to court. And the court, in its wisdom, had given a ruling order and an interlocutory order restraining INEC from such acts. My colleague there talked about Kwara by-election and the likes. I want to tell you that just barely a week after INEC deregistered political parties on the media, Enugu State CIEC, cleared about 68 political parties for local council election. And my party, our party, Nigeria Community Movement Party, was part of the parties that INEC deregistered. And this party was cleared. There are lots of fundamental issues to be looked into by the court of competent jurisdiction.
All right, Mr. Babatunde, I think that's a fair place to leave it because of our time. But I would like to thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time on the program. Mr. Ademola Babatunde, National Publicity Secretary of IPAC, it's one faction. And we also spoke to Mr. Agbo Major on phone, who's the Publicity Secretary of that interim committee.